Welcome to Soul via Soul, the podcast where we embark on a journey of self-love and true wellness. I'm your host, Jada, and I'm absolutely delighted to have you here with me as we dive into all things mind, body, and soul. Now, what do you say we get this thing started? Let's dive in.
Is there something that you need to have in your home that's just about you? It's not about your kids. It's not about your husband, your partner. It's not about your work. It's not about your friends.
I think one of the biggest struggles we have is sometimes seeing and staying in a space where we think a room has to be this. It's a bedroom.
You are worth having a space that you love.
How profoundly simple that is, and how difficult that is for so many people to actually say, I deserve to be happy. And as both of us being therapists, we're saying, put yourself at the top. There's nothing selfish about that.
Hi, and welcome to this week's Soul via Soul podcast. This week, I sat down with a good friend and colleague from Soulful Space Coaching, Kate Evans, the one and only Kate Evans. Now, I've talked to Kate before. Our first podcast was actually about decluttering, and Kate is a decluttering coach, but she's also a therapist, and she understands why it's difficult for a lot of people to start the process of decluttering. So if you haven't listened to that podcast, go back and listen to that one. However, today's podcast is about what to do once you declutter, and that is to actually intentionally create a sacred space. So Kate joined me in my garden, which is my sacred space, for the taping of this podcast. And it was a lovely, hot day, actually. And the first part of our podcast actually didn't have any audio because the phone overheated. So we had to erase that, and you're going to pick up in the middle of the podcast. But you only missed about 5 minutes of the beginning. So let me catch you up to speed about what Kate and I chatted about to get you caught up. We were discussing how difficult it is sometimes to give ourselves permission to create a spot that's just for us. And especially there comes this a little bit of guilt and shame about creating a space that is all for you. And that's a whole mess of worms about why we don't feel worthy of creating spaces for ourselves. So we were chatting about taking over rooms. Now, in the first part of the podcast, we talked about the fact that I was telling Kate a little bit about this farmhouse that my husband and I basically gutted and started creating our dream home. And we actually took bedrooms and converted them into spaces that actually served more purpose for us. And one became my office. One actually became an exercise room, which is what's important to us. And everybody's going to have a different need, a want, a desire in creating spaces in their home that speak to them. So we discussed taking whole rooms and creating that, but you sometimes don't have the ability to take an entire room and dedicate it to something that is uniquely yours. Sometimes you just create a spot in that room. And that brings you up to speed with where we were chatting about creating rooms within rooms, or a space within a room that is your sacred space. And as you listen to the podcast, I want you to think about, do you have a space in your home or even outside of your home somewhere that is your sacred space? My sacred space is my garden, but I also have a meditation spot within another room in my house. And that's where we're going to drop in, is creating spaces within your home that you intentionally create as loving gestures for you. So enjoy the rest of the podcast in the garden, and then it gets so hot we actually end up finishing the podcast indoors because it just became a little bit too uncomfortable to chat in the sunshine. So enjoy the podcast.
Okay, so let's talk about creating spaces that aren't necessarily a whole room.
Yeah.
So at times, a lot of people struggle with, I don't have the space. I don't have I can't devote an entire room to yoga because that doesn't serve anyone but me. And, my husband and my kids maybe need that space. So we had just started to talk about the possibility of creating spaces within larger spaces.
Right.
So, for example, I have a meditation spot, but it's technically in the family room slash dining room area, which isn't really dining room. It's just this large room. But I created an intentional spot where I have a chair and I have my crystals are there. I have things, my plants that bring me joy and peace, and it's a big space, but it makes me feel tucked in this little corner.
Sure.
So I know that when I'm meditating, pretty much no one is awake. So it's going to be a spot I can go to and know I'm not going to be interrupted. So let's talk about how you can be intentional about creating pockets of a room or a space that's like your reading nook with the lights good, where you can really just sit with the space and get a sense of what makes sense for you.
Well, and I do want to say one of the things that I noticed, and I don't know if this was intentional or not, is that little meditation space of yours is not in your office. It's not in the space where you work. Now, you love your work, but there's a very different energy in our offices. And your office is a lovely little space. You could easily meditate in your office, no problem. But the meditation space is in an area that is not in that energy. And that was very intentional.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. There's whatever the thing is that you want to do. Like, I was talking with a woman who she's actually in the UK. And so with Brexit, she went from a single family house to a third floor walk up apartment with her children. And so it was a huge change that they had to make. So they're in a much smaller space. And so she had to figure out how to have individual spaces for different things. And one of the things she was talking about was, one, she had to clean up her problematic teenager's space. But in doing that, she was able to then create a small space that was a play area for the younger ones. Now, this is not a large apartment, but it's clearly differentiated that this space, so we've got like a cabinet and we've got a rug and everything, and that is their little play space. And so she had to get creative with that to make sure that she had something for the kids.
Yeah.
And that's when you think about whatever your needs might be. Maybe you've got somebody who's a gamer and they want to be able to game, and maybe you don't want them at the main TV all the time.
Exactly.
Is there a different little nook that they can be tucked into with a really great gaming chair and really good headphones?
Exactly. Sounds like you're speaking from experience. Well, and I think, a couple things came up for me when you were talking about that. One is the idea of, like, when I homeschooled my kids, I had to have, we didn't necessarily have a school room, but it was basically like the kitchen living room area. And I had like drawers or baskets that were intentional for a purpose. I had one drawer in my kitchen that my kids could pull open, and it was filled with plasticware and spoons that they could pretend they were cooking while I was cooking. So they could be right there with me. And so it was intentional. It was a play drawer. It was a play kitchen in the kitchen because they wanted to be near me.
Absolutely.
And I couldn't, be distracted, nor did I want to be upset that they wanted to be with me.
Right.
Like, I got to cook.
Yeah.
It was, how can I create a space, a drawer, a spot in the kitchen that is theirs only? So
that's, I love that. That's something I recommend to parents all the time, some form of that. And it came from a friend of mine who, when her son son is 17 now. Oh, gracious. But when he was little, he wanted to be in the kitchen with her. So she had everything sealed off, but she had one drawer that had pots and pans in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was okay with him messing with pots and pans. She figured he wasn't going to hurt himself. He wasn't going to hurt the pots and pans. Like, it was just all the stainless steel. And he had a grand old time. Was it noisy? Yes. But he was having fun. She knew he was safe.
Right.
It was okay.
And it's difficult as a mom when you got to be in the kitchen and you don't know where your children are. Like, you can't be zipping all over the place, like making sure they're okay in a playroom that's like, you know, half a house away. Like that's sometimes not workable. Right. You know, so.
And I just am in my head. I'm just kind of thinking about other things I've seen people do. If you need to have an office space or a desk, but you don't have a lot of space, there are desks that actually fold up into the wall.
I've seen those,
and they don't have to be super fancy or anything, but you can't keep all your pens and pencils and your books and everything on it. But that's an extra flat surface,
right,
that you can utilize, and it might be in your main area,
right, but
it's still a sacred space meant for this one thing, and you only pull it out to do your bills, to do homework, whatever. There's so many things. It's all about, how does your family operate?
Yeah. And giving yourself permission to create a space that's for gaming. You know, like some people, that's not their jam. That's cool. Like, you have to honor what feeds your soul and what is sacred to you and what is your soulful space. So for like everyone that's listening, I would be like, the challenge of, as a plane goes overhead and a lawnmower starts up down the street.
This is the fun of doing things outside. We have all of the bugs and making all of their delightful noises. We have the planes, we have the lawnmowers.
I know.
This is real life.
It's real life. And there's a bird that lives in that little house right over there.
Oh, yeah.
And he was perched right up on his little, giving us the what's for, because he sometimes doesn't like it when I sit too close to his home. Oh. His home. I am invading his sacred space.
Yes. See? How dare you?
Although I did leave kitty fur for the birds to line their nest with, so they could make it comfy and extra fancy. I mean,
it's nice repurposing.
It was
I like that.
Definitely recycling, because what am I going to do with cat fur? So, but the birds find it delightful. So, I think one of the biggest struggles we have is sometimes seeing and staying in a space where we think a room has to be this. It's a bedroom, and we don't allow ourselves to go, oh, you know what? I don't need that extra bedroom, or I want to make this bedroom a lounge / office / let me put in a couch that folds into a bed, or a Murphy bed, or creating flex spaces that allow us to move with our lives. I mean, our lives evolve, they change.
Oh gosh, yeah. It's so, talk about evolution in guest rooms and offices and everything. When COVID happened, when pandemic happened, I suddenly went from working in an office space. I had a brick and mortar office, to, holy heck, I have to work out of my home. Now, the first stage of this was, well, we thought this was only going to last for like a couple of weeks, the quarantine. And so it was, I had the mattress up, the mattress was in the hallway, and the box spring was behind me, and I had cushions on the ground. This was not a very sacred space. This was what do you do really quickly? Well, over the course of time, as I realized, like, one, this isn't going to change for a while. We're going to be in this quarantine for a bit, and I can't sit on the ground forever. My back is going to, I'm never going to be able to walk again.
Correct.
And so I started actually turning it into an office. Well, my mom comes to visit. She's the only guest I ever really have. And she's nice and short. So this plays into, I had to get a couch that could turn into a bed, but I didn't have a lot of space. So I had to do a lot of searching. I found one that was just barely going to fit a 5-foot tall woman.
Yes.
And so that is what's in my office now.
Yeah.
And, and I'm in that room a lot. And so it has evolved over these years, because it was an emergency when I first did. It wasn't like this really initially intentional experience.
Right.
So I had to work toward it being an intentional experience. And excuse me, this year I actually like took everything off of my shelves and put everything back intentionally. And it looks so beautiful now. And I love it. Instead of sitting when I'm talking to clients, I'm looking at my bookshelf over the computer going, oh God, that's just a mess. What do I do with that? I go, oh, that looks so nice.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And it makes me feel good when I'm in that space. So it
yeah.
was like I say, it was an emergency, it was an evolution. Now it's intentional.
Yeah. And I would say that one of the things that creates like and thinking of the work I do with women and giving themselves permission to I think those lawnmowers are they in my lawn?
I do not see them in your lawn. Wait. No, that was a cone.
Okay, well, we may have to take it inside.
Do you want to take it inside?
And we'll start this conversation inside.
Sounds good.
So we're going inside, people, because it's just too hot, and the bugs and the Okay, bye. So we were talking about giving yourself permission. So a lot of times, what I see as a struggle with women is to give themselves permission to love themselves.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, we've talked before, your work and my work is not that different,
right?
Because it's still a permission to love yourself, just in a different way. And when you create a space that nourishes your soul, when it's a soulful space, when it is something that brings you joy and peace, that is such a gift to yourself.
It is. And I absolutely agree with you. Women, especially, we're acculturated, I don't know, is that the right word, to not put ourselves first. And I can't tell you how many women I talk to who I have to take care of everything for everybody else, and then I'll take care of things for myself. And in your home, you don't want to forget about yourself. And that, if you're the person who does the primary cooking and you happen to be female, okay, and the kitchen is a really beautiful space, that's wonderful. And if that is your soulful space, awesome. And is there something that you need to have in your home that's just about you? It's not about your kids, it's not about your husband, your partner, it's not about your work, it's not about your friends. And I don't know what that is for you. That's going to be different for every person.
Yeah.
But is there a space that just feels very personal to you? And so I had mentioned my bedroom before. And yes, that's a space that I sleep in with my husband. But he doesn't hang out in that room. He hangs out downstairs. Now, we tend to hang out in the same space. But a lot of times when he's not home, I'm up in the bedroom because it's just, I have just like my white quilt with my blue pillows, and it's all fluffy and soft, and the cats love to be up there with me too. And maybe we watch TV because yes, I have a TV in my bedroom. Maybe I'm reading a book, or maybe I'm staring out the window. In the winter, it gets the best light. It's so great in the winter, the light that comes in there, because my house doesn't have great light, generally speaking. But I didn't have that before.
Yeah.
And I talk to a lot of women who, again, they're thinking about, okay, so the play space for the children, or the office, for their work, or whatever it is. But what do you need?
Yeah.
And it might not be a huge thing. And my clients get really overwhelmed when I say, what do you want?
Yeah. Same. Yeah. When I say write your list of desires, what brings you joy? There's this look of, I have no idea, and that's where giving yourself permission to love you is not that different than giving yourself permission to put yourself in the equation of what do I want in my house, or our house. It's a shared space, but be able to give yourself permission to claim a portion of that for yourself. And like you, sometimes a bedroom is a good place to start. My husband has, when we moved into our first house, I never really gave much thought to the bedroom. It was just like, It was
Mhm.
just a place to sleep. But he
I
was
can
like,
talk about bedrooms.
yeah, so let's do that. But one of the things he said to me, which struck me, he was like, no, 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 no. Our bedroom needs to be our sanctuary.
Yes. All right. Good
And
boy.
he was very intentional about saying this is a sacred space that we are going to guard with our life. And I was like, what are you talking about? I need to be accessible to my children all the time. And he goes, no, you don't. And I was like, oh, what do you mean they can't have access to me any old time they want? And he was like, no, 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 no. You, and it's funny because it took him saying this to me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know this. Like, I'm a therapist and I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, no, this is a space that is going to be ours, and it's a sanctuary, and it's a place that we take the world and put the world on the outside of the door.
Mm-hmm.
This is a space that we 100% control.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a big lighting guy. He's an engineering guy.
Yeah.
And so I'll have to show you before you
I would
leave.
love to.
We have scenes. We have lighting scenes because lighting sets a mood.
Uh-huh.
Right? So he programs the remote control in some weird way that I don't even understand. But we'll say put on the evening scene, and the lights will do this funny dance, and then they get to like this dimness that's soothing. And then it'll be like we have a couple different scenes that and then we say, good night, and all the lights go off. Because who wants to get out of bed and turn the lights off when you get cozy?
We will have a race to fly into bed. If the overhead light is on, whoever's last to get in bed is the one who has to get up and turn the light off.
Well, now I'm going to make all the women be like, turn to their husbands and go, wait a second, there's a remote control that can program the lights. So yes, there's like certain outlets, or I don't even know how it works, but you can use your remote, you can program it to make your lights do things. I had no idea.
Oh goodness, I have a girlfriend who has a house where her husband is very into the technology of all those sorts of things, and has they have huge windows all around. It's a condo on the 10th floor in Fort Lauderdale, so big, floor to ceiling windows everywhere. So they have blinds that just automatically come down to a certain level at a certain time of day, and they go up at a certain time. Lights come on, lights go off, and everything can be remote controlled. So that it's really lovely. You feel like you're in the future.
But it's really cool about, and what's interesting is he was so very intentional about creating and it's funny because he sacred space, a soulful space, a sanctuary, and it is a respite. It is like a safe harbor for the world.
Well, and sleep is so very important. And I know that everybody hears this all the time. Get enough sleep. You have to get good sleep. If you've got sleep apnea, get a CPAP. For goodness sake, my husband just got one, so he's loving it. But anyways, but it really is true. You do actually need to get enough sleep. You need to, if you always have to be up at 5 a.m., well, you need to be in bed earlier. And you got to figure that out. And you got to figure out. So, but then that space that you're in, the energy of that space needs to be conducive to sleeping in that room. I talk with clients about this all the time. I ask them to remove exercise equipment. I ask them to remove bookshelves. I ask them to not have stuff hanging out on their bedside tables. Do not have a stack of books that you haven't read hanging out on your bookshelf, or on your nightstand, just reminding you of your failures in reading. Do not just shove things into the bedroom because it was a convenient place to put them when guests came over. Do not have laundry baskets piled up just sitting in your bedroom. Please have this be a space that is honored. So that your sleep is honored, because we heal when we are sleeping.
And that's so important. And to speak to that energy is so awesome too, because we don't sometimes think about what's cluttering the space, because it's cluttering the energy. And if you go to sleep and you happen to glance over at the exercise thing that you didn't do, the book you bought and haven't read, the laundry that you have to do, you go to sleep with all of those failures, the lack. And, for me, like I teach a lot of women about subconscious reprogramming and how to heal right. And the time right before you go to sleep is such a powerful moment because what you're thinking about right before you go to sleep can really impact your subconscious because we go from the high beta waves into the alpha waves into the theta waves as we drift off into sleep, and those slowing down of the brain waves is the window to the subconscious. And so right before you sleep, if you are intentional about pouring in good things, about feeling peaceful, and especially gratitude, I try to help women get into this space of, you know, be thankful and grateful for the things as you're drifting off to sleep. And if you've got stuff all around, it's harder to do that. But if you have a sanctuary in your bedroom, or you have the energy, and again, sometimes when I say energy, that's confusing, but I think most people know what it feels like to, let's say you come home from work and you go into your bedroom and I say take my work off. But when I take my work clothes off, it's I very intentional. Even working from home, even if I'm work from waist up, and my husband says party on the bottoms, and work on the way up on the topsies. But I still take off. I'm very intentional about saying I'm done with that part of my day.
Yeah.
I am going to take my work clothes off. I'm going to put on my lounge breeches, as we call them, and it becomes a very intentional thing to create that switch. And when we do that, I think most people can understand what it feels like when your work day is done. You get in the car on the drive home, or you take your work off, you take your work clothes off, and you feel this like this exhale of okay, I can take it down a gear.
Absolutely. When I was working in the brick and mortar office, and I was coming home at the end of the day, I would always leave my shoes on and I know some people find it just horrific that I would wear shoes in my house, but it was okay. I say that because I've had people like, I would never, why would you have your shoes in the house? But it's okay. Anywho, I would leave my shoes on, and I would do things like empty the dishwasher, tidy up some things in the kitchen. You do a few little things like maybe fold a little laundry. I would do something, but I'd keep my shoes on while I did this, because as soon as my shoes came off, my body knew I was home.
Yeah.
So I'd do like maybe 15 minutes of stuff, but then I'd take my shoes off and I was now home. I was no longer at work.
Yeah.
And now what I do is I wash my face.
Yeah.
So I go and I, scrub off the makeup
to,
be all pretty for my clients and mine. And I take makeup off and then I'm home.
Yeah.
So it just kind of changed.
Yeah.
But it's the same concept, the same message that goes to my brain as to whether I'm in work mode or home mode. And I just, with the bedroom, I do want to say something about closets real quick, because most of us have our closets attached to our bedrooms. And whether it's a small thing or a walk-in or whatever it might be, if your closet is chaotic, even if your bedroom is calm and serene and beautiful and wonderful and ready for sleep, the energy will come to you of chaos from that closet. Now, my husband, so our closet is not chaotic because it's very, very intentional. I had built-ins put in there, and I've worked to declutter it down to like only what actually fits in that space. So it's great. But my husband will still close the door to the closet when we sleep, so that even just the stuff that is in there is really not impacting our sleep.
Yeah.
And I recently worked with a client who had this beautiful bedroom, just so gorgeous, so intentional, everything just pristine and perfect and beautiful. And her closet was filled with decades of clothes. And it was her last decluttering kind of thing that she had to do, and it was so emotional for her, and so much of her own sense of value was wrapped up in this. And we went through it, took everything out, decluttered, put everything back in, and she burst into tears.
Yeah.
And now her closet is not talking to her while she's sleeping.
Yeah. You know what's funny, because I didn't clean my closet before you came over, and I'm going to show you my
All
closet when we're
right.
done.
Sweet.
And it's funny because my husband said, "Well, maybe Kate wants to declutter our closet," and I was like, "Don't you even go there," because it's this. It every so often I'm like, I get a bee in my bonnet, and I'm like, "All right, that's it." Like I'll try on one piece of clothing, and I'll be like, "Oh, I know that if this doesn't fit me, like 8 of those dresses are not going to fit me right now," right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's this tug of war of hanging on, which we talked about in the first podcast,
Yeah.
about how our stuff is, it's a symbol of
Mm-hmm.
either, an attachment of what we want in our life or what we feel like we need, or it's a symbol of who we think we are or who we want to be. And
Mm-hmm.
it really controls so much of our lives. When we let it go, it's very freeing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't surprise me that she burst into tears,
Mm-hmm.
and there's something so wonderful and freeing about, and again, I'm talking about energy, and it's a feeling. It's
Mm-hmm.
that, even though the term some people may grapple with is like new agey or something, it's really, it's it's tangible, and most people know what it is when you start describing it. Like
Mm-hmm.
when you get in your bed and the sheets are clean, like I love clean
Oh
sheets.
gosh, yeah.
Like you get
Uh-huh.
in bed and like the bed is
Ah,
clean sheets, and you just slide in and you're like,
so
oh,
fresh. It just
like
feels so good.
that is a feeling, yes, but there's an energetics to that.
Mm-hmm.
An open closet door and you stare at it and you see the stuff bulging out.
Mm-hmm.
There's an energy to that.
Mm-hmm.
That's encroaching
Mm-hmm.
and chaotic. And it's like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna look at that. I'm gonna close that. But you said something earlier about um, a home. And creating a home is something that is different than like just having a house. Like when you create a home, what
Yeah.
does that mean to you when you help someone create a home? What does that
Mm.
mean? That word?
I guess to me, it's a place where, like, where you belong. Human beings have a primal need for a sense of belonging.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this place where you belong. It's a place you want to go to. It's a place that reflects you. It's a place that you feel like it welcomes you when you come in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a home is where you live. I mean, there are the logistics of you raise your children, you get married, you live your life with people, or you know doing it on your own and loving life and all these things. But it's it's like not a home until you really put your stamp on it. But that doesn't have to mean like you have to remodel the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
I have a client who, what we actually worked on was getting her to a point where she was able, as a 40 something, to kind of love herself enough that she could take the money she had saved and move out of her parents' place, because she had ended up back there a decade or so previous. So she bought a little house, and this woman made this place a home for her and her dog by making it hers. It is so eclectically, beautifully hers.
Mm-hmm.
She loves things, she loves stained glass. She has stained glass everywhere now. And
Mm-hmm.
she's kind of collecting it and putting it up. She loves comic books and anime and
Mm-hmm.
cosplay and that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So she has things that represent that throughout
Mm-hmm.
her house.
Yeah.
She is represented throughout her house unapologetically.
Yeah. And that's powerful, and
Mm-hmm.
I I again, we've talked so many about the parallels of what we do, and having a home that you connect with on a soul level
Mm-hmm.
is nurturing and
Mm-hmm.
nourishing to your soul, your spirit, your body,
Mm-hmm.
your mind. And similarly, like I think what I help women do is come home to themselves. They
Yeah.
come home to themselves by honoring their ability to give themselves permission to love themselves, just like you help women get to the process of giving themselves permission to feel worthy of spending time on creating a space that speaks to them.
Yeah.
And loving you is at the heart of it. And it's, the home that we live in, as we've talked before, is an extension of ourselves.
Yeah.
And how we exist in the space is how we exist in the world. And how we care for our lovingly decorate our home is how we literally lovingly decorate our lives.
Yes.
And if you give yourself permission to, take the step, sometimes it's easier to do something that's more outside of you first. Like, I'm going to clean this room, or I'm going to clean this closet. And then you realize that there's an inner change that's starting to happen. And now I talk about this like as an athlete, I'll use that as a springboard. Sometimes it's easier for me to say to a client, okay, we're going to change this thing that you're going to eat because you're changing a relationship with food. And then suddenly that creates an opening to see the possibility of creating change in another aspect of their life.
Sure.
It's kind of the same thing in that when you clean a closet and you feel this sense of freedom and joy and happiness and overwhelm of this flood of emotion that comes out of you because you've detached from an old version of you. And part of the process, actually, that when I work with women, it's very similar. One of the things I have them do is declutter their closet. Because energetically, it's easier to say, I don't want that dress. But what you're doing is you're saying, I don't identify with the person that used to wear this dress.
It's so personal. Clothing is so personal.
Like, this version of me is gone. And actually, in the work of transforming our lives, you transform people's spaces. I hope in the business of transforming lives, but we both do in the same, just different ways to get there. But part of that strategy is to understand that we are in relationship with ourselves and relationship with our space.
Absolutely. And that you are worth having a space that you love, that you are worth taking the time, because that's what a lot of people, it's, oh, I don't have time, I have to do this, I have to do. Well, how about what makes you feel good? And love yourself enough to say, I'm going to take the time to do this for myself. And to create a space that I want to be in. It is, every single one of my clients, we have to talk about how they feel about themselves, what they give themselves permission to do, what they feel they're worth. And so there's actually another thing that came to mind that I wanted to bring up, which is when other people bring stuff into your space. So you might
like
be
my college kids who dump their crap in the middle of the floor.
Like your college kids leaving crap in the middle of the floor. Yes. Or gifts that people give you, or
that's
things
a good one.
that are inherited.
Oh, that's good.
And so you end up with Aunt Sue's, buffet or something like that, and you don't like this thing. It doesn't feel right. It's energy. Actually, that was one of the things. The woman I was working with on the closet recently, she had a lot of clothing that her younger sister had given her, and it was stuff that just, there was an energy to it. Like she never wore it, and she didn't know why she wasn't wearing it. But it was because it was her sister's energy in this clothing, and she just didn't want that. It wasn't right for her. In my own home, as much as I adore my parents, they're both artists, and I could have artwork of theirs everywhere in my house, I can't have any of their artwork in my office. Pots mostly is what they've given me. My mother's given me drawings too, but none of it can be in my office because that is a very sacred, very personal space for me. If people give you something, I mean, how many times do you get something in like the office gift exchange? That it's like, I remember one time somebody got an office gift exchange. It was a candle that was 3 monkeys. It was the see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil.
Yeah,
It was 3 monkeys.
Nice.
I was looking
What's she
at
going to do with a monkey candle?
I really hope she just got rid of it. I really hope she did. But it's in your home, and you have permission. I am giving you permission right now. I'm giving
Throw it
everyone
away.
to get rid of the
Or
stuff.
give it to someone.
Right. But if it is a monkey candle that is just creeping you out, you're allowed to throw that away.
Yeah, or just burn it and say some beautiful things.
Right.
And then make it purposeful, and there you go. You've done your thing.
Yes. But you don't have to keep the inherited items. You don't have to keep the gifts, and you can, kick your kids until they get their stuff off of the floor, like the college children when they come in and bring their stuff back in. It really is funny because like creating a space that's really for you as like the empty nester, and then having children come back in, boy, talk about like energy flipping around and changing and stuff.
It does. And that's a whole nother podcast. We can talk days on that one. Having 6 kids, that's definitely something that you have to struggle with when the energy shifts, when people come in and when their stuff comes in, and making room, to do that. But I think, really what I want to kind of wrap this up in a nice, beautiful bow, as we kind of, get to the end of the podcast, is really just this understanding of intentionality, worth, and investment. So many women especially struggle with investing in themselves.
Yeah.
They don't even create themselves in the ranking of things that they have to take care of. And we're really bad about that, I'm just going to say. And as a mother and a homeschool mom, and all the other hats that I've worn, you too, is that we struggle to put ourselves in the mix, number one, and we really struggle to put ourselves at the top of the list. But if we, don't fill our own cup, as they say, you cannot continue to love and serve the world. And part of it is loving you is the foundation for all other love in your life. And that extends to your home too. Because when you give yourself permission to love you, it has ripple effects across every other relationship in your life. And I know you view our space as it's a relationship. It's definitely a give and take, and it's bi-directional. The energy flows to and out of us, and the space and the objects that are in that room give, and it's an exchange.
It definitely is. It's giving yourself, like you've said, that permission to have a home that you love, to have a life that you love, to put yourself first, and to break the mold, especially for women. We're talking very much about women, and that to say that you are in fact important, and so you take care of your stuff first. Make sure that you feel good and feel loved, because like you're talking about with the ripple effect of you love yourself, you're kind to yourself, you're gonna have way more love and way more kindness to give to other people. And that is, I've learned lessons about kindness and how that feels, and giving kindness to those who haven't been kind to you. And when you give yourself permission to live a proactive life, to live in a proactive home, you don't have to be reactive. And reactivity is what gets us in trouble. So we slow back down again, and we say, it's okay for me to be happy.
Yeah, and you know what? How profoundly simple that is, and how difficult that is for so many people to actually say, I deserve to be happy. And as both of us being therapists, we're saying, put yourself at the top. There's nothing selfish about that. There's nothing egocentric about that. There is something that's divinely inherent in our birthright to be loving and to return to love, to return back home to ourselves. So, returning home to ourselves and understanding that home is not only the space that we occupy, but it is the space that we occupy within ourselves.
Absolutely. Well said.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you so much, Jada.
It's so awesome to have you here. Now we're going to go take a peek in my closet,
All
and you're
right.
going to tell me all the things I got to get rid of.
Yay! That's the fun part for me.
Right? Not for me.
If you enjoyed this podcast, then I have some great news for you. First, like and subscribe to stay up to date with new episodes on all things wellness to help you connect back to you for healing and wellness in body, mind, and soul. Secondly, consider joining the coolest membership around called the VIA Collective to enhance your personal wellness journey, unlike any other program out there. As a medical and mental health professional, this membership is jam-packed with tools, resources, mini courses, workshops, guided meditations, and guided journal exercises, as well as exclusive pricing on all my courses, and includes optional monthly one-on-one individual and group coaching sessions on all things wellness. It's like having a medical professional and mental health professional on call and tucked in your back pocket to help you reconnect to you and come home to living your best life. Go to the link in the show notes and join the VIA Collective today and elevate your mental and physical health. The best version of you is waiting.